Good morning, everybody, from Centennial Complex 3111. We will be back here on January 1. So we will stay on Zoom on January 18. That's next week. Then on January 25, we plan not to meet. However, the other class that meets here, led by Jim Walters, usually has a Christmas program, and they will have one there, and you'll be invited to go there.
I think you mean December 8th.
You mean December, right?
18, December 24th.
Right. So today I think is December 11, and then December 18 we'll meet here. That is, we'll meet on Zoom. But then on January 1, we'll let anybody who wants to come here come. Now we will continue as a hybrid situation so that people can still participate in Zoom, and those who want to come here can. We'll see how many decide to come on campus. It may be that most people are just as comfortable watching it on Zoom, maybe even more comfortable, but we'll make this option open. Okay, today we have Dr. Robert Ford, who is going to share with us different aspects of his life. As I wrote, I've been wanting him to do an autobiography for some time, and now we're starting in that direction. So the first part of his program will be about his family. It's a really remarkable family, and then about his own journey, which is not only one of different locations, but also one of different ways of viewing the world. So I think we'll hear some interesting things from Bob on that. But then at the very end, we're going to have enough of a break to look at some of his slides. And we hope to leave on a high note because of that. Bob, how much time should we reserve at the end for the slides?
I have it organized so we can just play as we go. I think, yeah, it should work out just fine. We can cut out some if we run out of time or whatever as we go.
No. Do we need a half hour to do it, you think?
Yeah, it'll take about a half hour, but
okay.
We can take breaks after each little. There's a series of little shorties that are about 3 minutes long each, and we can stop for questions along the way, and then we go till we stop, you know?
Okay, let's do it. So we'll sort of let Bob coordinate things here as it seems fit. Looks like Simona's hand is up, is that right? Simona, did you want to say something?
No, my hand is not up, sorry.
Okay, somebody's hand is up down there. It's mine. All right, that's a problem. Okay, here we go. Let's have prayer and then over to Bob. Dear God, thank you again for another wonderful day, particularly here in Southern California. It's just beautiful as can be. We are glad to be back, in a way, back to the Centennial Complex, having some problems, but we'll work that out. But today, we are most fortunate to hear from Bob Ford and the many different ways his family has lived, and the many different ways he and Karen and their children have lived. So help us to be attentive and learn as much as we can on this occasion. In Christ's name, amen. Over to you, Bob Ford.
Okay, I'm gonna share. And so Forrest, you tell me whether this is working okay? Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, okay. It's titled Beautiful People and Places, and that should bring back some memories there, Dave. You remember the Haight-Ashbury time when we were in college? Okay. Not the same, exactly the same, but it's in hopefully a better spirit.
Okay.
Okay. Now, there's famous statements about history and learning from history. These are just some of the more famous ones. kind of different plays on that from Winston Churchill, George Santayana, and Edmund Burke, who is often misquoted. And but I think it's an important thing. And today I want to talk a little bit about family history and how I think that often for many of us kind of sets the tone of where our own lives go. And so I want to touch a little bit on that today. And hopefully you'll find it interesting. I'm going to first do a little look at kind of my professional and academic and formal mission service. We'll talk about that. And this is going to be a series of little slideshows that we're going to go through. This picture here kind of set the tone for my life in many respects. When Karen and I were first born, we were living up in the lakes of northern California, near Vining, near Mono Lake. And we were watching the moon landings. And I remember this picture. And I got involved with geography and a lot of science issues over the years. And so let me just play this little video. I hope it goes and you find it interesting.
Always
And let me just stop at this one for a second. If you look in this picture, for those of you that recognize one of my best friends, sorry to have lost him a few years ago, Charlie Teal. He and I used to travel and take students from Loma Linda down to Central America and Mexico. And this is from one of our trips on that time. And this is one of the other memorable events of my life. If you want to ask some questions, I was in Washington, D.C. on 9/11, got evacuated and so on. A very important day for many of us, a sad day. Now, we can go back and you may want to ask some questions about some of those if things stand out for you. But I want to just play another little quick first, and then we'll have some questions. And this goes into probably the one person, not the only person, but a person that had a great influence on my life, Dr. Oosterwald, who used to be at Andrews University. And let's listen to this little video, and then let's have a little discussion. Okay, maybe a few questions or comments at this point. When we talk about Dr. Oosterwal, I got to participate with him before we went to Africa on a Missions Institute, but I helped him with Missions Institute several times as well. And one of the most memorable was in Avondale, Australia. I see we have some of our members today that are from Australia. And I don't know if you have, Dave, at this point, any questions or comments, or you want to say things before we kind of move on, talk a little bit about some of the places I've gone to and maybe what some of the questions might be. Do you have any comments or questions?
I do have a question or two, and there may be others. One question is, could you tell us something about Dr. Oosterwal and how you met him and so forth, what his background was? I had one course from him at Andrews University, and it was a very good course, but I did not get personally acquainted with him like you did. So when did you meet him? His background, I think he had 2 different doctorates, didn't he, in 2 different fields? And I remember it's a very, very stimulating class, and he required a lot, but I did not have that personal contact with him. How about saying something about that?
Well, I don't know all of his academic history, but I got to know him through a mutual friend, Dr. Elich, John Elich, who was head of anthropology at La Sierra. And when I went to graduate school at Loma, I started under Dr. Elich. And he got me in touch with Oosterwal, who had come to visit. That's where I first met him when I was a master's student in sociology and anthropology with Betty Sterling and John Elich and so on. And Oosterwal talked about some of his missions work because he kind of like John Elich. And again, I'm not fully aware of all of his history. It's pretty long, but his involvement in the mission field and his feeling, and this is one of the questions I want to discuss a little bit later, is how do we as Adventists, do we have a message that's truly good news? Let me go to the next slide here. And I think this is kind of the question. What is the Adventist message today? Is it a message that can reach all peoples and places? How well are we doing in terms of promoting a message that brings peace and it brings tranquility and it brings transformation, health, and all those things that we Adventists claim to have? How are we doing in terms of reaching that world, that broader world? And he always felt, and there were others that came along into the Missions Institute the same way, that we need to, and I know, Dave, you like to use this statement, we need to be a broad tent church. Now, what does that mean, okay, in various places around the world? Does it mean, now maybe I'm a little oversensitive about this, but having grown up in Central America, born and raised, my grandparents were missionaries, my parents, and I can remember having discussions with my parents and grandparents about whether the Adventist message, particularly as it was being promoted by missionaries, say 40, 50 years ago, was it a truly Christian universal message, or was it an American message? And to me, I think that's still a challenge for us today in terms of thinking, how do we create a message that it truly brings peace in an open tent way across the world? So I think that's still one of the challenges that we face today. So the question, and maybe what you want to talk about it a little bit, is the SDA message good news for all people and places around the world?
Well, who wants to jump into that first?
Let me see if I can tag onto that, Bob.
Okay,
When I first started in the ministry, we did things to help people in order to get them interested into the Adventist church so that eventually they would become baptized.
Cái đầu bọc Ford que siempre leave.
I get that. Okay. But I'm just, through the years, I've decided that there's other things like not only a health message, but good agriculture that are beneficial to people, and we should take a look at that.
yeah, so we should have yeah, and I think you're touching on something I want to keep coming back to. Is it primarily about bringing a good message to us as individuals, maybe as families, and maybe we know our close community? Or is it a message also about the broader community, the broader world, and nature itself? I know that we've discussed this, particularly given the environmental issues that the world is facing now. How well are we doing in addressing those broader social, economic, and environmental issues, as well as things that affect our individual health?
I'm going to suggest, Bob, that again, I'm going to be very pluralistic. I think there are some forms of Adventism that are indeed good news, but some forms of Adventism are very bad news. And I'm not paying attention, but I've been trying to get onto online here and get to Spectrum. Maybe someone else can do that for me, because in the most recent Spectrum portrayal, there is a statement by William Johnson, and he lists 7 things that he hopes the church will do in the near future. If someone can find that on Spectrum, I think listing those would be very, very helpful to us. One of the things he points out is that the fundamental beliefs say nothing about the 2,300 days, nothing about that. And yet we make much of that, and particularly we are making much of it now. Here's Dana has, I don't know if Dana, if you have the article before you. Oh, okay.
I will try to find it and post
Okay.
it, okay? I'm
Yeah.
working on this. Thank you.
Well, and read it to us when it comes time.
David, is it in the last issue of Spectrum that just came out this week?
No, it's online at spectrummagazine.org.
It's online.
Spectrummagazine.org. It's marvelous. And it's so upbeat. And his theme is that the work of a minister is to cheer people on, not to condemn them, not to urge them to do this or that, but to compliment them for what they are doing, as Paul did always. When Paul wrote his letters, he always began his letters by thanking the people and commending them for how well they were doing instead of condemning them. But there are some forms of Adventism that are so destructive that I think it would be better for people not to hear them at all.
Yeah, I'm particularly concerned about that. You've maybe followed, I know that in the other class, Jim Walters' class, he's been circulating a statement that they're trying to put out, dealing with how some of our brethren, including all the way up to the General Conference president, are saying about groups of people that we may or may not agree with in terms of their lifestyle or whatever. And I was particularly hurt a couple of weeks ago when I read the statement by the president of the Ghana Union, Southern Union in Ghana, one of the largest concentrations of Adventists in Africa, where they are joining with some right-wing groups there to try to criminalize all discussions or all those that are practicing LGBTQIA statements. And the church, the Adventist church in Southern Ghana, is getting known as a very reactionary, at least some of the leaders. And so that worries me, not that I agree or totally agree with some of these issues, but I think that our first duty is to be brothers and sisters and tolerant and to try to create that warm place, as you say, where we can bring people in and discuss them. And so I don't want to get into political discussions or anything like that, but that hurt me when I saw some of those things happening. And I'm wondering, you know, are we really bringing good news or not?
Well, I see Dana has the article. Instead of posting it on chat, Dana, how about reading it to us?
Whole thing.
Go ahead.
I'm
Just
not sure. I'm
just
not sure if I can do
lines.
this, but I will try, okay? Let me see if it's working. So first one, can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfectly.
First one is cheer the people on. Second, Jesus is enough. 3, the tapestry of Adventists, including all people. 4, affirm women and children. 5, embrace the world around us. 6, restore the hope of the second coming to its right place. And 7, the message of a God of love. And it's a beautiful article.
Wow, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. And, you know, it didn't say anything about the 2,300 days or the sanctuary service or, you know.
Investigative judgment.
Right, yeah.
Or the 28th.
Yeah, no, very good, very good. Thank you for sharing that. I hadn't seen that. I think that's really the core of what I'd like to try to focus on today.
Bob, but I'd like to comment further, and that is, I know people are weary of me talking this way, but I think there's a fundamental difference between those who want to see the whole church become more healthy in a variety of ways, whereas I'm thinking that no, that we should not expect that. If we do, we're going to be disappointed, but we should develop a school of Adventism or a form of Adventism that is distinguishable from the others, and have a self-conscious attempt to keep in touch with each other all around the world. We have that chance now with the technology, and there are people just like us in the Adventist world all over the globe, and I think we need to get in touch with them and have a mutually encouraging relationship. But to expect the whole church to change in directions that we might feel helpful, I think is to set us up for very, very keen disappointment.
And that's an important point, Dave. But I know you're more of a historian of, and ethicist than I am. Can the church stay together and still accommodate all those different views? Institutionally, maybe we stay together with certain kind of family and cultural links and so on. We don't know. Other churches have gone through certain travails like this. Is it possible to stay together and be that broad tent church that you talk about?
Well, I see other people are jumping in here, and that's good. I would like to respond to that in two ways. One, staying together is not all that important. I think there are a couple of hundred different Methodist denominations, about that many Reformed denominations. I think there are maybe a little more than that Lutheran denominations, and they have world councils that get together, but those world councils don't have administrative authority over the local denominations. There are times when people come together for mutual support and edification and so forth. And when I've talked to people from those communities, they're amazed that we have one denomination all over the world. That hasn't even occurred to them. The only real success on that front is the Roman Catholic Church, but it's very authoritarian and top down. So it has a structure that it can enforce. So that's my first point. Staying together is not all that important. Maybe we should split up into 13 different world divisions and go that way. Now, my other response, though, is that I don't think we have to go down that street, because there is one thing that holds us all together no matter what, and that's the Sabbath. I noticed somebody mentioned the Sabbath here, but the Sabbath is the sacrament of Adventists that we share no matter what else. That is, we enjoy the end of the week celebration of God's goodness, and we enjoy the community that the Sabbath brings. So just like the Mass holds together Catholics all over the world, I think the Sabbath will, and allow there to be a lot of diversity other than that. That's it for me.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. Yes. I think Simona has a question or a comment.
Yeah, Simona, go ahead.
So, as always in many other parts of life, not just church, when good people stand away or keep quiet, lots of bad things happen. We cannot just isolate ourselves and say, we are great in each other's company and we get together, we talk, but we have to also confront people who are doing things in a way that is not in line with teachings of Jesus. And I think Jesus was much more egalitarian. He was much more, his message of mercy and justice, working together, his message of care for all people, particularly for those who are marginalized and so on. These are important parts of who we are. And I don't want to just say, well, I'm disappointed about people who are saying something against LGBTQ. I want to stand up and say this is wrong. Because, that's the way how we support our brothers and sisters who are LGBTQ. That's how we stand up for what is right. And, giving the pulpit to those who are saying other things is basically just abolishing our duty to the humankind and to each other.
Yes, and that's a quandary. When to speak up, when not to speak up. That's a tough one. You may have seen in my little video that I was involved in our local politics. I was on the chair of our planning commission for several years, and I actually ran for county commissioner here in southern Utah. Can you believe an Adventist Democrat running for a county commission? I did quite well, actually. I didn't win, of course, didn't have much of a chance, but it was a chance to speak up about certain kinds of issues. And whether it was on land use and water, but it was also on social issues. So it is, Simona, you're very right. We need to find the proper ways and venues to speak up. And maybe that's worth discussing a little bit. How do you decide and how do you speak up when there are things that happen? We're in a very polarized world right now. I worry about this a lot. It seems like we're not only talking past each other, we're talking against each other. And that's kind of the way things are. Maybe it's the social media effect. I don't know, just a lot of questions.
It could just said some, the world is polarized, but trying to avoid discussion about important things is not going to make it less polarized. It's just going to allow those dangerous elements in the far fringes to gain foothold in our society and to bring the whole thing where we don't want it to go. Remember history, if I can now go back to one of your first slides, Hitler's support was not that high. When you look at the society, it was about 1/3, and look what happened. What happened. And so, when we think about some things that are happening in the United States right now, for example, it is worrisome that we have 1/3 of society that is completely unable to face the facts. We're not talking about esoteric things that, may or may not be true, nobody knows about. And so we're talking about factual things that they have seen with their own eyes and they have heard with their own ears, and they still claim that they're not true. And so there is a point at which we have to stand up and we need to speak.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Yeah, and it's a worrisome trend. I really worry about it. I grew up in an authoritarian type of society, was born and raised in Honduras, lived in Nicaragua. went to high school in Costa Rica, which is a lovely little democracy, and loved there. And it's interesting that here we have this small little part of the world, Central America, and you have the full range from authoritarian dictatorships to beautiful democracies, all with a similar cultural background in the same area. So, you know, it can happen anywhere, and we fool ourselves if we think that we can, oh, well, things will work out okay, just keep quiet. You know, we have to speak up. I agree with you there, Simona. And I don't know what Dave has to say about this. Yeah.
Well, I think I've been speaking up for 40 years. On the gay issue, we had a conference, published a book, and we are aware that it's made a difference, and that's why the General Conference president is pushing back. On the women's issue, I've been pretty vocal. So I agree wholly. I've tried to do my best to speak up, but I could do more, I think, maybe more effectively.
Yeah, we have to just keep at it. That's for sure. There are probably other questions for us. Are there other comments, or should we go on and watch a few more little videos?
I don't see any more questions, Bob, so why don't you go ahead and do some more videos?
Okay, these are little shorty videos, and we'll just do one or two showing different parts of the world. You know, and as some of you know, I'm a photographer beside being a professor, and I've traveled all over the world. So some of this is just for enjoyment, but keep in the background of your mind, what is the SDA message to this part of the world? Are we doing well there, or are we not doing well? And I'm just going to pick a few of these. Let's take one where Adventism is doing reasonably well. You hear a lot from Reinder Bruinsma from this part of the world. So, you know, that might, it'd be interesting to hear what he has to say, but let's just watch this little video and then so on. I might mention that my older son and our 3 grandkids live in Switzerland. So that's one reason we go back and forth and explore some of that. Let me just show you another brief one, and then we'll have a few more comments and questions, okay? This is about some of the places in Southern Europe that I've been to, okay? Okay, just a few comments. I've been traveling to Europe over the years quite a bit. And what's interesting to me, to kind of get back to our key question that we're trying to explore, are we bringing good news to this part of the world? Now, it's interesting that Adventism in Europe these days, and tell me if I'm wrong, some of you maybe know better than I do, it's primarily a church of immigrants who come from the third world. When I go to church in London or in Geneva, most of the church members come from India, the Philippines, Africa, Latin America, and it's become an immigrant church. The old European Adventist church is really dying away quite rapidly. Now, is that just cultural? Are we just looking at forces that are beyond our control, or is our message faulty? What do you think? No comments, I guess.
Well, a little of both, maybe.
So, and it's,
Eduardo got his hand up, by the way.
yeah, Eduardo, please go ahead. Yes.
I was reading lately Sister White letters, and she mentioned that when she went to Europe, somebody gave her an advice, and the advice was like, these people is close-minded, but if you speak as fervently as you do, you might reach some hearts. And I think this was about more than 100 years ago. And I think that Europe, the whole world has their opportunity, and I think they lost the spirit. The streets, the buildings shows they reached the glory, the blessings of the Lord when they were the right people. But I think that today, is quite different people than the people that build those nations. That's my comment.
Sure. Eduardo, just a question. And I've wondered about that too, but this is happening in our country as well. What you're talking about is the broader trends towards secularism around the world. I saw it in Latin America when I grew up there. It's gotten a lot worse. Many of our young people leave. They don't feel that the church is a warm place anymore for them. So it's not just a European trend, this is a global trend. And I don't know, Dave, maybe you have some comments on that.
Well, there are a couple participants who are wanting to speak. I do hope that somewhere along the line, Bob, though, you'll talk about your grandparents and whether what they did was good news for the people in South America and Inter-America, because I think what they did may be a model for what others might do.
Yeah, we'll do that. A little bit later, I'm going to show some pictures from South America and places where they worked, and we'll talk about that. Yeah.
But there are several people who want to speak.
Sure.
Okay, Juan.
Okay, Bob, you have raised a quite sociological question. I mean, if I understood you correctly, is why in the old world, Europe, and particularly in Western Europe, Adventism, I mean, is mainly composed of immigrants. I grew up in Barcelona, quite a big city, and when my wife and I were there as a youth, the church was quite vibrant, and I would say somehow growing. but things have changed and have followed the model that you have seen in London or in Paris. And yes, now the church in Madrid and in Barcelona is basically composed or largely of immigrants. Immigrants come from different places. And for instance, about 15 years ago, the leadership of the Adventist Church in Spain was quite happy because the membership have tripled. About the 5,000 members that typically were, 50 years ago, all of a sudden became 17. Most of them coming from East European countries, particularly Romania. So when they became members of the European Union, they moved to Italy and many other places and Spain. I have observed here, because my observation is quite limited in the United States, but we are experiencing the same here in the United States. Adventism is mainly, especially in the big cities, of immigrants. And if you pay attention, even here in Loma Linda, it's becoming the same, because although it's in a suburban area, it's by the way the city is constituted, attracts many immigrants, and that is what the church is becoming. So this is a phenomenon that happens in Western in general, and it's not unique only of Western Europe. It's unique of urban cities, and is unique of any societies that increase in acquisitive power and that becomes urbanized. Anyway, I will stop here and I can continue more on my sociological appreciations.
Very good points. Yes, I think Dana has a question, and Jeff Kao. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. And I am Romanian. So this is very true. I can tell you from experience, not only that I came here and I'm a member of the church here, but after the Romanian Revolution, many people went in Europe. The president of the union in France is a Romanian pastor about my age. And when we went to the General Conference in Atlanta, the secretary of the General Conference came to the meeting of the Romanians, and he made a very interesting comment. In one of the big, my husband keeps correcting me, and I get confused. So there was this affirmation that was made by the General Secretary of the General Conference. He said that wherever three nations, wherever they go, and these nations are Ghana, Filipino, and people from Ghana, Philippines, and Romania, wherever they go in the world, they build churches, and this is how the membership grew in some Western European countries, because these people build their own churches, and it becomes not only a religious center, but also ethnic center, a national center. They bring people of other religions over there to have community of their co-nationals. So that's an interesting phenomenon.
Well, that's good in some respects. Are there any downsides to that, or how do you feel about it?
I feel that at a certain point we should stop having national or ethnic churches, and we should mix around. I can look at the Romanian church in Loma Linda. I believe in, my prediction is that in 10 years, they will stop speaking Romanian in church, because all the older people that prefer the Romanian language will no longer be with us. And the younger people, they will either go to English speaking churches, or they will start speak English in the Romanian church and have services in English. That's my prediction as a sociologist.
Well, the same thing is happening among the Spanish communities as well. Yeah, so this, as Joan Sabate was saying, we're looking at a big sociological forces here. So are we saying that sociology trumps theology, Dave?
Well, go
They-
ahead.
they- they
I'll let
cannot
other
live-
people jump in.
Without the other. One cannot live without the other.
Yeah. So yeah, no, there's some big issues there. Yeah, I think Jeff, at least it says Jeff. I don't know if it's Jeff or whoever has a comment. Yeah. Are they still here? Yeah.
Yeah, I was still here trying to get on.
Okay. There, we hear you now. Yeah.
Okay. Two things. It seems like we're discussing a little bit, two tracks. One is what happens in this country with immigration of people from other countries, and how that affects the Adventist church here, and perhaps how the church here affects the immigrants. And that depends, of course, on where that happens, because if you watch church this morning, you will see that the Academy Choir is made up mostly, it looks like, of the children of immigrants, Adventist immigrants. But overseas, when we go there is a sense in which we carry with, or Adventism historically has carried with it in the missionaries, an American set of values, as well as a theological set of theological beliefs. And in some places, this is very good. And the first thing that came to my mind was the stalls. And those of you who've been to the stall center or heard or read about them, how effective they were in implementing real social change and the bringing of some justice to the people to whom they were sent. And I think they really were. They were sent as well as just got up and went. So I think a lot of the effect is kind of individually dependent. If you say whether Adventism affects, or even Christianity has a good effect when it goes somewhere else, it just sort of depends on who's carrying it. It's not just the message, it's the messenger in these other places. So that's really just my comment. I don't know if it's peculiar to Adventism. I think we have some things that we carry with us that are unique, but otherwise, I'm not sure how different we are from other Christian groups that go to other places, as Christianity has spread around the globe, both historically and at the present time.
No, you're absolutely right. That tension between who we are as ethnic or cultural background and who we are as Christians it's really, really central, and it's hard to not let our own selves get involved with the message. And I know that I don't know, maybe mention a little bit. My grandparents went to South America in 1923 to fill in for Fernando Stahl when he went on furlough. And when he came back, he decided to go to the Amazon, where he did a lot of his most important work, particularly very, very active dealing with deforestation, but dealing with the effect on the indigenous peoples. He was very political, very social. My grandparents as well got involved with some of those social action issues. And of course, the Stahl Center. And I traveled 4 or 5 times to Latin America with Charlie Teal, and we used to talk a lot about this. But I just wonder, and maybe this is a question, have we lost those kind of people? Are they still out there, or are we too big to hear about the people that are the Stahls and the Fernandos and the others, of today? Or is it a different world? I don't know. I wonder about that. Okay, I think Eduardo, I think, has his hand up, and there's.
Well, let me do this. I've had let me go to McKinley because Eduardo and Dana have both spoken. So McKinley, I'm going to go to you, and then Graham, and then I'll come back, and then I see you, Simona, as well. So
And Graham has his hand up too.
right,
Yeah.
I got him. I've got him.
Okay.
So, McKinley.
Thank you, Forrest, and thank you, Dr. Ford, for sharing some of your life experiences and journeys with the class. I want to focus my comments and observations on two questions you asked. And the first one is the Adventist message faulty? I think this was a part of the question you asked in this segment. And my perspective is this: a message that brings peace, a message that brings hope, a message that brings health, a message that brings life, a message that brings rest, a message that instills a noble character and noble aspirations, a message that brings enduring happiness and love. These are all principles that people around the world, regardless of their culture and sociological experiences, aspire to. And in my experience, I think this is the Adventist message. I don't find any faultiness in a message with those characteristics. The second question, is the message relevant? I believe that the message is still relevant because people are still seeking solutions and meaning in life that competing solutions are still not providing. So notwithstanding some of the challenges that some of our members and community have and are enduring, I think there is a lot of positive attributes to the Adventist message. And then, as Donna said, as important as the message is, equally important are the messengers.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
we as Adventist Christians bear a responsibility to share a message with these characteristics. It is fine for us to point out the flaws of the message, but we have a shared responsibility with both the organization, meaning the church as an institution, but as individuals, to share this attractive message. So that's my observation.
Thank you, McKinley. That was wonderfully said. I think Graham has a question.
Graham, go ahead, Graham, you're up.
Well, thank you, everybody, for the contribution. This is a big and complex topic, and many contributions are needed. One thing that it's just a small contribution maybe to the discussion is that it strikes me that for we as Adventists, one of the things that has happened for us is that our command of the timetable has broken down. So many of our beliefs and emphases, and that I'm not saying right or wrong, I'm just saying so many of those beliefs, attitudes, motivations were time linked. You know, the Lord is coming soon. This is the last generation. We have this hope. The world is coming to a disastrous end if we don't do our work. We are responsible for the lost souls. You know, so lots of our doctrines from the second coming to the judgment are just linked with this hard copy version of time management. And history has now caught up with us in that God in his wisdom, or whatever phrase you want to use, is not fitting in with our timetable. And so our whole, it seems to me one of the factors is that our whole reason for being is disappearing. Are we the people who have got some sort of message for the long term? We were pretty good at having well, you can argue about it, but many would say we were pretty good at having a message that was for the short term, immediacy. Everything needed to happen. Some of us were counseled by our parents not to have children because the Lord's coming was so close, etc., etc., etc. And with the breakdown of the timetable comes a breakdown of the us versus them rationale for that. You know, the world is divided into two groups. There's us, Adventists, and there's everybody else. Well, that's sort of largely disappeared too for many of those of us who are thinking about it. But as Dave rightly points out, not for the majority of the saints in the church. And the panic by some of our leaders is to get us back to that definitive us versus them. We've got a handle on the chronology or the timetable. It will work out. We demand it be so. So coming to grips with that is going to be is difficult for some. So the breakdown of the us versus them means that words like tolerance, equality, understanding, diversity, climate, environmentalism, these are all things that are relatively new to us, because I think in some ways we're searching for a message going forward, because so much of the message that motivated us to go out as missionaries and do things like that is looking questionable. So where will we go? I don't think we're going to convince everybody, as Dave has correctly said. But can we still be a power for good in the world? I think so.
Oh, absolutely well said. You said better than I could even say it, but that's kind of where I've struggled myself a lot, and with my students and my work, you know, where, and you're so right that for those of us that grew up in that early church, it was really about us and them, and it's sad in a way, but how do we move past that? I'm sure there are other comments about that.
Okay, I've got Eduardo up next. Eduardo?
Okay, Robert, I was reading this week the first issue of Signs of the Times, and the first article is titled "A True Picture." And he's talking about the Christian nations. And it says that the Christian nations went up to the pleasures of the world, and they don't want to be bothered. When I went up to the GC, I was not invited to the yearly meeting for the employees. But one of my friends came back and said to me that they give gifts to the employees, and they get computers, they get phones, they get things not too expensive, but something. And she said to me, I got tickets to go to the game. I don't remember if it was baseball or football games. And she had several tickets. I don't think that we need a rocket science to know the reason why people of great nations are going down the hill. They are going up to the pleasures of the world. And the poor people from countries that are coming to these nations, they are coming in a way that they haven't passed through the experience. They still are faithful, humble, but if they get success, eventually they're gonna go the same way. I think that that is the reason why, and I recommend highly to read that article, A True Picture of the First and ends on the second issue of Signs of the Times. You can see it on the internet. I would like to hear you and comment about my proposition that the people, the Christian nations, or the Christian churches are going up to the pleasures of the world, and they are not interested anymore in the humble Jesus.
Well, I'm not so sure about that. But when you use the term Christian nations, that worries me a little bit because as far as I understand, Jesus didn't come to set up a nation or a kingdom. That sounds more like nationalism to me. And I think that's been, and it's now a problem in around the world. So back to some of the good questions that were being raised just earlier here by our friend from Australia is, do we have a message that's truly a Jesus message that's good for all people and places, not just quotes Christian nations? I don't know. These are, let me just show another little video and then let's come back to this because I'd like to show you some of the places where Christianity does not have a lot of influence and ask you, well, does Adventism have a message for these places? We'll show a couple and then
Before you do that, Bob, David is half past. Should we take our 10-minute break now?
Yeah.
How many people still would like to speak?
Well, I've got 2, 3 here, and we can pick them up when we come back.
Okay, let's do that. It's about 11:34. So let's say 11:35. How about if we in California? What if we meet in at 11:45? How about that? Around that range.
Sounds great. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
We'll see you then.
Yep.
All right. Thank you, Bob.
Are you still recording?
Okay. All right. Bob, I guess you wanted to show some more of your slides. And then we've got.
Let's listen to McKinley's question first, because
McKinley,
it set it up. Yeah.
Yeah.
McKinley, go ahead.
There were other people ahead of me, though. Do you want me to?
I'd rather take them first, McKinley.
Okay. Yeah. I recommend that.
Thank you. Okay. David, should I do the questions up, or should I have Bob go ahead with the presentation or the slides?
Well, let's get the people who want to say something on board. What do you think? Let them.
That's good. That's good to me.
Okay.
Okay, Dana.
Hi, thank you. So I wanted to touch a little bit on the question, how American is our Adventist? And I want to share that when I was little in school in a communist country, people would ask me about my weird religion, and they would ask, so how are the weddings in the Adventist church? And my answer would be, have you ever watched an American wedding? That's how weddings are in my church. So this answer speaks by itself. I also want to add that in Greece, people that are not Orthodox, Eastern Orthodox, they were not allowed to have a passport for the longest time possible. I don't know what the situation is today, but they were not considered national. In my own country, I'm considered a traitor of my national identity because I'm not an Orthodox. And when I went to India, I asked an Adventist, a young Adventist, so is there anything from your culture that you keep as an Adventist beside your clothes? And she said, no, I completely lost my identity as an Indian because I'm an Adventist. So these are things to ponder when we take our Adventist message to other countries. Thank you.
Those are very good questions, very good questions. Ones that I've struggled with. I know my grandparents struggled with that as well. You know, are they bringing Americanism or are they bringing Christianity? And I guess every generation has to keep asking that question over and over. You know, it's important.
True.
Okay, go to Simona.
So, you know, I'm listening to this discussion and why does it matter? Why does it matter whether our churches are filled with quote unquote immigrants versus native population? We are a worldwide church. We are members of the same body. I couldn't care less if the person sitting next to me in a pew is from Central America or from some Pacific island or Timbuktu. I don't care. You know, we all one family. Second thing is that I don't want to live in a Christian nation because I really don't want anybody to legislate their Christianity or their understanding of what Christianity is supposed to be on me or anybody else. I don't want to legislate my religion on anybody else either. So I think we are conflating certain items here that really should not be conflated. We should not legislate our religion. We should be a voice in the country in which we live and in the world in which we live. But we should not impose our views on others. And third thing is that, you know, we live in a world that is changing, and I don't think this is new for anybody. The world is changing rapidly. The information is flowing really fast. And the last thing that I'm worried about, the pleasures of the world. This world will not be destroyed because of the pleasures of the world, quote unquote. It's going to be destroyed because of greed and carelessness and the fact that we are not caring for the environment or the people around us and so on. And so I think we need to shift our priorities a little bit. What is really important? And as McKinley said, you know, it's not the message, it's the messenger. The message is still present. It's still valid. It's still important. We are looking at the world filled with people who are hungry for meaning. And if we can't, if we have no meaning in our own lives, how can we give it to anybody else? So I think we need to consider looking a little bit inwardly towards who we are and how is our own life meaningful? Are we satisfied with our own religion, and what can we do about it?
Well, that was so well said. I can't add to that, Simona. Wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to go to Jeff or Donna, whichever the case may be, whichever the KO may be here.
Yes, yes, Forrest. I just want to go back very, very lightly to the issue of taking the Adventist message with an American tone, as we do and did, or at least as we did at the beginning. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that was a good thing, actually, because by and large, whatever the faults are of this country, and there are many, it has the underlying value, the base of the Constitution, the base of the country from the beginning is liberty, freedom to be what you can or want to be. And for a long time, this has been the place in the world where that kind of value could be realized for individuals. So and it's no accident, I think, that Seventh-day Adventism began here, not in some other places, even in the old world, because there's a tone of independence, of free thinking, and I don't mean to say that the founders or the earliest European settlers were all pure and freedom loving, but there is, what did the Stalls, for instance, or your grandparents, Robert, bring to when they went to the Andes? They were bringing an underlying value of this truth shall make you free, and being free means you too have a voice in the government. You too have a share in the material goods of this country. You have a vote. So to suggest that somehow having an American shade or tone is a bad thing everywhere, I would say not. And I think I also worry a little bit about wanting to discard the idea of a Christian nation, not a Christian nation in the sense that everyone is a certified member of a Christian church, whether it be Adventism or some other denomination, but whether a nation has these kinds of values underneath. A lot of our founders were not, at least technically not Christians, but nonetheless, the values that they had, they extracted, if you will, from a long Christian background. And so I think, so I just wanted to put in a good word for the adjective American, because I don't think it should always be looked at as a negative.
No, I agree with you largely with that, Donna. The only problem is, and maybe it's the problem of us who have lived most of our lives abroad. I grew up in Latin America, where whenever you use the word American, you use the adjective dirty American along with it. Okay. And I, it kind of depends on what side of the Rio Grande you grew up on, how you looked at it. No, so these are complex questions and issues, I agree completely that those fundamental values of our founders, not only of our country but of our church, are important. And if we're talking about that, it's fine. But if we look at the polarization going on in our world today and in our church, I think we're seeing polarization in our church. It's really about disagreement about some of those fundamental values. And it gets back to that fundamental issue. Is it us against them? Do we need to have an us against them? In other words, to have people be fervent believers and followers? Yeah, I think that's the issue and the question. So it's tough. Someone was mentioning nationalism and the church and the Greece in Greece, where you had to be Orthodox to get a passport. Well, the same kind of thing has happened in Russia. We don't have time to look at that little video. My daughter-in-law is from St. Petersburg, Russia, and I spent some time in St. Petersburg getting to know our in-laws. And it was really fascinating to see how the world of Putin works and how they look at the world. And of course, they've come back to the Orthodox Church in many ways. But that Orthodox Church in Russia today is in direct cahoots with a lot of the oligarchs and the greed and so on. So I mean, that kind of nationalism scares me a little bit. And Putin says he's representing Western Christianity, of course, Orthodox. But I mean, is that the world we want? Just some questions. Yeah.
Could I respond just for a second?
Sure.
I agree that many Americans are ugly, to use the title from
The book, yeah, yeah.
The Ugly American. But that is not the same thing as saying that at least the putative values that we speak about, our ideals, the goals we set, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that everyone is created equal and has certain unalienable rights. And that Jefferson had feet of clay, was a slaveholder, many bad things, but he was able to distill that ideal in a sentence. And that to me is the thing that appeals across all humanity, all kinds of languages, and the things that we can bring. I think we should continue to bring, and I do fear to some extent the kinds of values that come from some immigrant places where women, for instance, are told, shut up, go back to the kitchen,
Right.
don't try. Women are not supposed to speak in churches. We can see those words right here. That kind of thing, I think, is detrimental, and it needs to be countered.
Well, you're absolutely right there, Donna. That's where I think we need that broad tent view that Dave keeps talking about. Thank you, Dave.
Okay, all right. I'd like to go to McKinley now. McKinley? Oh,
Thank you very much, Forrest. So, Bob, you asked another question about whether the message is relevant, that is the Adventist message, is relevant to other cultures, and I'll add across time. And I'd like to offer this, and then you can comment on it. The content and the attributes of the Adventist message that I alluded to earlier are universal aspirations. Okay. Who doesn't want? What family doesn't want? What society doesn't need? Peace, hope, health, rest, nobility of character of its members, happiness, liberty, echoing Donna. And I just like to, one of my favorite passages in the Bible is from Galatians 5, verse 1. I like to think that liberty is one of those divine gifts that no man and no government has a right to infringe upon. So the Adventist message remains an important message, a valid message, an essential message, and it's the message of hope that our Lord came to give. And how privileged we are, as Simona said, that we as a people, individually, let's forget the institution for a moment, but we who have been exposed to this blessing have an obligation to share. So I'll stop.
No, it's absolutely important, really, really important. Let me, I'm just going to skip forward here a little bit.
just one moment. Jeff had a hand up quick.
Sure.
Can you do that, Jeff or Donna?
Sorry. There you go.
You didn't have it up, or you did have it up? Okay.
I did have it up, but I
go
meant to have it down.
Okay.
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 All right, thank you, thank you.
Okay, let me just show a brief video from a place where I worked for almost a year, where I never met an Adventist. I heard afterwards that there was an Adventist there working in the government, but I never met them. And ask, kind of continuing this discussion, is our message appropriate for that place too? Okay, and this is from South Asia, a little video. I worked as an environmental consultant in Abu Dhabi, United Arab Emirates. I worked in Kuwait and a few places like that, and in North Africa, doing research on the Sahelian drought. And there's a few pictures from that. And let's talk about, is our message able to reach these places? Well, just listen to this. Okay. Okay, let me just comment briefly. You know, I was really challenged working in some of these places. If you've, I don't know how many in this class have lived in Muslim society, even a rich society like Abu Dhabi or Dubai, or in a very poor one like then Upper Volta, Burkina Faso, Senegal, Niger, Mali, and so on. And I was struck by you know, what the difference is. And of course, they think that they're in a perfect religion as well. And yet, you know, some of my best friends, to this very day, is the imam from the village that I worked in northern Burkina Faso, Fulani. I would have never met him unless I'd been there. And he helped me, I'd say, spiritually more than some of my own Adventist brethren did. So how do we get to that kind of message that can transcend sociology and culture and history and truly be the message that McKinley is talking about? I mean, I think that's the challenge for all of us today. Any comments about that?
I do have Jeff's hand up again, or Donna. Well, I guess.
You're having a techno idiot trying to,
Oh, okay. All right.
that's the problem. So,
All right, let's go to Simona then.
You know, I often think about these countries where women are subjugated, and large part of the countries that you just spoke about fit that bill. And I wonder how a church that still does not view women as equal can speak to women in those countries. How it can speak to women when the only people they can speak to have to be female.
Right.
And so there's lots of aspects that we as a church, we need to change our ways. We need to find a way to embody the message that we are delivering. You know, words speak, but actions speak louder.
Right.
And I can tell you that, you know, for example, in Bosnia and Herzegovina during the war, one agency that was revered by everybody was ADRA. And do you know why? Because they helped everybody, regardless which religion they belong to. And they were the only such religious group that did that.
All right, that's good. I've worked several times with ADRA, and that's one of the main reasons I'm still an Adventist. I believe in their kind of mission and their approach, and I think that's absolutely wonderful, Simona, you say that. And what used to really bother me, and still does, of course, is our relationship with women and so on. And it kind of gets put front and center when you live in a Muslim society that puts women down. So no, it's an important issue. Let's just see another just brief video from another great part of the world where we don't have a lot of influence. Okay, and this is from China and East Asia. You know, today the big geopolitical struggles in the world are between China and the West. How is Adventism going to deal with that? Let's look at that and let's talk about that briefly. And to give a couple of just personal experiences, my wife and I went as student missionaries soon after we were married to Japan. And we went to Hiroshima first. And we used to go and visit frequently the Hiroshima Peace Memorial to the atomic bomb disaster. Then we went up into northern Japan, Hokkaido, and then came back to Loma Linda. It was really quite a thing. After my research in the Sahel among the Muslims in the 70s and early 80s, I was invited by the National Geographic Society to travel with them all the way from Beijing to Central Asia on the railroad, the Transcontinental Railroad. It was the first trip by the National Geographic back to China. And so some of these pictures you see are from that trip and some from later. And I realized that, you know, there's huge areas of the world where Adventism has very little to say. At least I think it could have things to say, but maybe we need to broaden it. I don't know. Any comments? Or, you know, I think these are some big issues. You know, earlier we were talking, do we need to rethink our message? Or is it, again, I think Donna touched on a very important thing, that it's the messenger that's more important in many respects. The message are words, and you can have good words, but unless the messenger embodies the message, it's going to fail. And so I think that's a challenge that we all face, particularly in a world of information technology where we're tied in all around the world. So it's a huge challenge. Yeah. So Dave, what do we do next? We're kind of...
unless somebody else has something to say, maybe what do you have on board for us?
Well, I've got Eduardo. I'm trying to look at my time here. Bob was going to talk about his grandparents, if I remember correctly. So I'd like to be able to get everything in here.
Why don't we give Eduardo a chance and then call it off at that point?
Okay, and then we'll go to Bob again and take it from there. Okay,
Perfect.
Eduardo, again, back to you.
Okay, Bob. The message of God to Adam and Eve to swear, to drop, I don't remember the word, sweating to get your food, and the pain for woman's delivery, and men ruling over women. I think that the message has not changed. Women still have pains. People are sweating to get food. And you know, when Paul said that there is no man and woman or male or female, a slave or master, I don't think that hasn't changed. Why didn't get rid of slavery one after Paul wrote the letter? I don't think that is nothing to do with changing the message. I think that we need to study carefully because people want to change the message. And I don't think that we need to change it because we want to. We need to find a reason. You know, when they changed circumcision, they said, oh, the Holy Spirit guide us to change it. So we need to have a reason for a change, not just because we want or some cultures want it, or we need to have a firm foundation for changes. That's my comment.
Well, good points there, Eduardo. I guess the question is, what is the change? And then I think it's also back to the messenger. I mean, is the change taking us to that area of better community, better healing, better collaboration, happiness, all the things that McKinley was talking about? Or is the change because we're trying to impose some certain view? Is it about control? And that whether it's political control or control in the family or control in the church, or that's kind of been the human problem from the very beginning. You've raised a lot of questions there. We keep coming back to them. Why does God allow pain and suffering? Why do we have pain and suffering? Why do women have to suffer for childbirth? All kinds of questions. I'm sure, Dave, you have all of the answers there. But so.
Could I just say
Wait,
something, please?
Sure.
I think we're talking about the wrong message here. Are we talking about the cursing of the world? Are we talking about the hope for the world?
Absolutely.
What's the message?
Yeah.
What is the message? And I hate to say this, but if men had to suffer to childbirth, there would be no human race. Secondly, both men and women sweat too when they work.
Yeah.
And we earn our bread in the sweat of our brows, regardless whether we are men or women. And so I think what is the message? The message is that God saved this world, and that curse that was imposed with the sin is not ideal towards which we are supposed to go. The ideal is that we are all equal, that we are all saved, that we are all loved, and that we belong to the same in the same place. And so if we don't have that message, then maybe we shouldn't be spreading the message of fear and cursing.
Absolutely. Well said, Simona. Couldn't add to that.
Okay.
No.
Okay. And by the way, that kind of piggybacking on that, Monty raised a question a few minutes ago. Monty, did you want to ask that question to the whole group publicly here now? Or?
Well, no, I will just say that I think I've heard a lot of references to the Adventist message. And anytime I hear that, I also hear in the background that different people have different messages they think the Adventist church should have. So I don't think it's helpful to talk about the Adventist message and whether or not it's helpful. I think there are Adventists who have different messages, and some of those, in my judgment, are helpful and to people around the world, and others are not. Some of those are helpful to people of some genders and not to other genders, or different communities and not other communities. So I don't see, certainly not now, I don't see an Adventist message. Some might say, well, then there's the official Adventist message, and I don't really know what that is either. I suppose some people would lean on the 28 fundamental beliefs for that one. But anyway, it's just complicated. But yeah. I don't think we have an Adventist message.
Right. No. Very good point there, Monty. And I think you're glad you brought us back to that central idea. I'm going to take a liberty here and just go forward a little bit and ask. I know we don't have a lot of time left. We might want to leave this to another day, because I wanted to talk a little bit about how we as Christians, and maybe we should just be talking about Christians, not Adventists per se, how should we relate to nature? I know we don't have a lot of time, and we could maybe do more of this some other day, but I'd like to just point out a few issues and that I think are important And unfortunately, I feel that our church hasn't done as much as it should in terms of looking at our relationship to nature. There is a group that I got involved with several years back that I found very helpful to me as a scientist dealing with conservation. And I had to go outside of the Adventist church to find this kind of community. And they produce a magazine called Creation Care Magazine. It's the Evangelical Environmental Network. There's several beautiful resources. There's a little book that they published a few years ago that I found very, very helpful. This is My Father's World, a unique perspective on environmental ethics. And then, there's particularly someone that's been involved with conservation. I found it kind of disheartening to not find in my own community a very strong interest or understanding of that. And I've just listed here some of the books that I started to get involved with to help to better understand some of those issues. And so, maybe in our last time that we have here to discuss, let's talk about, is there a need for updating the Adventist message? Maybe, Monty, you're right, we shouldn't use that word. Maybe we should just talk about how do we become better messengers so that the message that's being transmitted is not just a particular institutional message, but it's a truly Christian Jesus message. And are we up to the task of dealing with the broad issues of environment, of social justice, of climate change, of corruption, of nationalism, of war, those broader issues. So, I hope that we can rise to the challenges that we face today. So let me just stop my little sermonette here and let's see what people have to say. Yeah. I know Dave. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I've not seen any hands, David. I did want to say a couple things here, Bob, if I could. We talked about the Americans around the world. Let's not forget, I think the British did just the same in their world of influence. So I guess it's all culpa to that. The other thing is there an either or here, the Adventist message versus the sociological and economic impact? I'd like to suggest that we keep the spiritual emphasis like we have, but we also need to add and expand things like ADRA, different types of programs around the world to better lives for people. It's estimated that 25,000 children die an hour in the world because of poor water. So what are we doing to impact that? So and that's more rhetorical, but anyway, I just like to see us broaden, not get rid of one. But
yeah, you make a very important point. It's one that I used to debate a lot on myself and when I did consulting for ADRA. And it seems to me, this is coming from my work among the Muslims, that you can kind of slough off your charity and your good works to others. ADRA does wonderful good works all around the world. And it's so easy, we'll give an offering on the Sabbath for ADRA and then not think about your responsibility the rest of the year. Now, in Islam, one of the 5 foundations is that you should help someone directly, face to face, every day. When you give alms, it's not through some impersonal organization that's going to pass on and do the good works for you, but you need to do something every day for your friends, your family, people that even you hate, okay, direct, face to face. And that was really eye-opening for me. I didn't become a Muslim, but I think we could learn from that. And maybe we need to figure out more, how do we bring that spirit back into our churches so that we're doing more things direct? Just another little sermonette. Sorry about that. Yeah.
Okay, I got Ruth Christensen has her hand up.
Yeah.
Ruth, unmute yourself and there you
I
go.
did.
There you are.
All right. Many days ago, many months ago or years almost ago, I was on the General Conference Executive Committee, and there was a person who was in charge brought a mission statement to be approved of. At that time, I felt that the only thing that they were wanting to have the mission statement include was the number of, well, it went up to however many it did at that time, number of, and that those particular issues were the preaching the gospel on these particular issues. And that was the reason for the work of the church, doing this particular thing. And that was all that the mission was going to include. Because several of us had some questions about it, this particular situation was put back to the committee that had wanted to have that approved. And so we went back to the committee, and the person in charge, whom I won't name, said that they had put on months of time in coming up with this, and how on earth could anything be done in a few hours that would make it better or make it useful. Well, I repeated myself from what I had said down below. And I noted that if all that was important for the church was the gospels that were listed in this list that they wanted us to approve, did not include anything that we would say that the church had anything that it cared about that had to do with education. It didn't have anything to do with ministry to the health ministry, with the work with any of the people that had to do with any of the other sorts of outreach that we had, in any outreach that mattered for other people, and that went on to other things, and I won't remember all of them, but at any rate, this seemed to me to be a big loss. Well, fortunately, we had a couple of hours to talk about things, and it was agreed that there was something more that needed to be included in the mission statement for the church. So it did get better. I mean, I don't think it was anything beautiful that it had arrived from that work, but at least it was not the only thing to have just the whatever number of points that they were listing at that time. So, but I have been hearing today folks mentioning all these other things that are really the things that we need to do. And I am grateful to hear so many of them say those things are important.
Well, thank you for that, Ruth. I think I was involved in some of those discussions way back when I lived in Sligo, as well and elsewhere. And I know it takes a while for institutions to catch up with somewhere the people are. I think that's just a sociological fact, and maybe that's the issue that we're dealing with here. So, so anyway, Dave,
I think it's about time to quit. Well, how does it look for us?
Well, I have the chaos, but I don't know if it's a technical issue or a real.
Oh, I really have my hand up.
Oh, okay. Then we'll do you, and then David, then we can end our program today after Donna speaks.
Well,
Okay.
it's just a closing remarks, actually, because we have to leave. I just wanted to thank you for the pictures, Bob. I've really enjoyed this tour that you've given today, the photographic tour. You have wonderful pictures. I'm not at all surprised that the National Geographic invited you to come along on their trips, because you really have created some beautiful pictures.
well, thank you. I was just we didn't get to this part. We were, Dave and I thought we would save 30 minutes for it, but it's long past. Maybe some other Sabbath, Dave, you let me know. I have a series of, I was going to show a series of some of my best nature photography from around the world. And we'll do that some other time. I learned photography when I was a student missionary in Japan. I started and I've been taking pictures ever since then. It's been a wonderful outlet, and I appreciate you giving me a little bit. Maybe just to kind of end here, let me just show you a few, and then we'll have the closing prayer. Just a few from autumn around my home here in southern Utah. Okay, let me go back here. Well, thank you, everybody. And Dave, back to you. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Bob. This has been wonderful. And I have an opening or two in January. And I think we need to have a time when we just go through the nature pictures you have and sort of be inspired by that. And then after that, we can talk about something if we want. But let's start off with the pictures the next time we're together on this, because we weren't able to get quite to them. Now, one comment, then we quit. You know, if one pays attention to what's happening in Washington, D.C. every day, and if one watches the news every day, one would have the impression that everything is really unhinged in America. But there are millions of people in this country who have sort of just tuned all that out, and they're having a good life. And similarly, if one is too attentive to what's going on at the headquarters of the church or around big institutions like we're at, one can sometimes get discouraged. But think how many Pathfinder clubs there are. People are having a good time. Think about how many potlucks, church potlucks there have been as the Sabbath rolled around the globe, with the little kids running all over the place and having a wonderful time. The hospitals that are being built, the schools that are being built, the organizations like ADRA. So if you go to a horse show, you can look at the horses, or you can look at the droppings of the horses. I suggest you look at the horses, and I think it's much better. There's so much progress. One of the most conservative union conferences in the world has just voted this week to ordain women, contrary to the Council of the General Conference. This is one I would have thought this would be the last conference to do it, but it has done it, and it's done it of its own accord. You know, so his truth keeps marching on. You can't stop it. His truth keeps marching on. So we should be of good courage as we end this year and start another one. Thank you, everybody. Let's have a prayer. Dear God, thank you for Bob. Thank you for all these pictures. Thank you for his experiences. And thank you for his willingness to share them with us. Help us to look at the horses, but not the droppings. In Christ's name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Dave. It was fun.
Thanks, Bob and Dave. That was really great to generate all of these exchanges in Sabbath school.
Talk about potluck. My wife is at church today at potluck. Well, I stayed home to do Zoom. So
Maybe
Forrest, before you leave, could you make McKinley a co-host? And then he can continue on after we leave.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording right now, if you don't mind.
Good.